welcome to the channel. So in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about Manchester United manager Eric Ten Hag's first season in charge of the club in the Premier League and compare that to some degree with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's very first season. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's very first full season was 2019-2020 season. Did you know that we are the second most improved side in the Premier League this season? So United's 75-point haul was 17 points better than what we achieved last season. So that's an improvement, only beaten or surpassed by Newcastle United. So our points increase had us move from 6th to finish 3rd, as you likely know. Now, you may have heard rival fans argue that United only did well because Chelsea and Liverpool didn't do so good. But honestly, that's crap. That is just crap. Because if those two teams had got as many points this season as they did last season, we would still have beaten Chelsea by 1 point. And we'd have been in 4th, so in a Champions League spot. Yes, we'd have been behind Liverpool, who would have been in 3rd. So again, you know, we got 17 points more, an improvement for Eric Ten Hag's first season, and it's an incredible achievement, especially given the circumstances of what has happened in and around the club this season. So Ten Hag had to take over the club and basically faced a limited transfer budget compared to some of his rivals, especially, let's say, Chelsea, who completely flopped this season. They finished in 12th. Although we did spend 200 million on incoming transfers, we did lose quite a few players, such as Edison Cavani, Juan Mata, Nemanja Matic, Paul Pogba, Andres Pereira, Jesse Lingard, to name a few, and all of whom Eric Ten Hag really needed to replace. So, you know, before he could think about bringing players in, which ultimately he didn't do. The manager also had to contend with an unsettled Cristiano Ronaldo, who spent the summer trying to arrange his escape from the club. And did you know he even refused to play in the last pre-season? He refused to take part in that. I remember seeing pictures of him on Instagram, like lounging around on a boat, you know, setting a great example for all the young lads at the club coming through about what they should and shouldn't do as a professional footballer. But anyway, United also suffered a number of long-term injuries during the campaign. Now, so before I continue, what I'm doing here is I'm building a picture of the season, of what Ten Hag dealt with or had to deal with during the season, to give us a kind of an idea of what he had to contend with and how such an incredible feat it is to finish 3rd with everything that's gone on. So let's continue. So obviously we suffered a number of long-term injuries this season, so that included Donny van der Beek, Christian Eriksen was out for a while, Martinez has been out, Martial's been out, Varane's been out at times. We've had Rashford out come at the end of this season and a little bit early on in the season. And then we've had the ongoing issue with Mason Greenwood and his criminal charges that ruled him out for complete season, and obviously may rule him out as a Manchester United player completely. And then there's also been questions over Jadon Sancho's mental condition or his confidence on the pitch, and that led to him missing basically quite a large chunk of the season. And it's actually only in the last couple of games since Anthony's been injured on the right, and Jadon's gone over to that position where he's looked anything like a player that we would think could stay at the club. And added to that, there's been the distraction, or let's say the ongoing saga surrounding the club's takeover, and a season that saw us play more games than any other club in Europe's top 5 leagues. We played more than any club in Spain, in Italy, in France, in Germany. You know, you name it, United played more. So the fact that we ended in 3rd with 75 points, in my opinion, it is a minor miracle. Definitely a minor miracle. So this Premier League season has been a huge achievement. Eric Ten Hag has achieved loads this season. and so have the team. But there's more positives. There are more positives to take out of this season. Did you know that Ten Hag has equalised Sir Alex Ferguson's record for the most United home games won in a single season? He has. He really has. Sir Alex set the record for the most wins in the 2002-2003 campaign. That season, we won in the Premier League. We won 27 home league matches at Old Trafford. And also, did you know that United have dropped only 9 points in 19 league games at home? But our defensive record at home was even better. We conceded just 10 goals at Old Trafford, comfortably the best in the entire Premier League. So our defence at home was the best in the entire Premier League. And also, 48 we gained 48 points from 36 home goals, which suggests we are at a very, very, very efficient team at home. And basically, I hope we can replicate that next season. It may be difficult, but from a defensive point of view, we should have all our best players back by then. And Martinez should be back, and all should be good there. But praise has to be given to the defence as a whole, and that is despite Ten Hag being forced into, like I mentioned, a series of changes. Martinez has been out for quite some time. But what about the comparison between Eric Ten Hag and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first season? Well, let's take a brief look. So, as I mentioned earlier, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first full season was the 2019-2020 season. That season, we achieved a third place finish, so the same as this season, but we accumulated 9 less points. We accumulated 66 points. The team also registered 18 wins, 12 draws, and suffered 8 defeats. That equates to a win rate of 47.36%. So what about Eric Ten Hag's first full season? This season, obviously, we finished third. We accumulated 75 points, so that's 9 points more than Ole's first season. We registered 23 wins, 6 draws, and 9 defeats. So that equates to a win percent for Ten Hag across 38 games of 60%, which is a huge. Well done. But what about goals scored? Ole scored 66 goals that season. Ole's team did, exceeding 36, ending with a goals difference of plus 30, which I think was an achievement, a really great achievement, in fact. I mean, especially if you compare it to this season. And we know there have been issues in front of goal this season. But the stats are 58 goals scored, 43 conceded, and a final day goal difference of plus 15. So looking at those figures, they are very contrasting, and they paint a picture of Ole's team being the least leaky and the most, the better goal scorer inside. And while the stats don't lie, you do have to look a little deeper to see the real reason why that happened, why the team this season didn't score as many goals as the team under Ole. And where basically that boils down to where the goals were coming from. I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had a larger list of players that he could pick from across that season, that 2019-20 season. So those players consisted of Mason Greenwood. So that season he contributed 10 goals across 31 games. Martial as well. So he contributed 17 goals across 32 games. He played 32 games that season. So that shows you that at that time, or that season, under Ole, he wasn't as injury prone. As for Marcus Rashford, he also contributed 17 goals across 31 games. As for Bruno Fernandes, it was his first season for United, so he contributed 8 goals in 14 games. But obviously that isn't the full 66 goals, but other players scored the odd few goals here and there. However, Ole had these players fit and selectable for the majority of that season, whereas Ten Hag hasn't had Greenwood at all. for obvious reasons. And Martial was out for the majority of the season. And Marcus Rashford was unable to surpass his 17 goal tally that he collected under Ole. However, he did equal it over 4 more games. So he scored 17 goals in the Prem this season, Marcus Rashford did, which is the same as he scored under Ole, but he played 4 more games for Ten Hag. But it's still a good return. Additionally, the goal contributions from Bruno Fernandes have dried up a little. Yes, this season he did equal the number of goals in the Prem that he scored for Ole. So remember, he played 14 games for Ole and scored 8 goals. So this season he's also scored 8, but he's played more than double the number of games for Ten Hag. So he's played 37 games this season, missed 1 game this season. 37. So you couldn't be called greedy for wanting more from him. But I think about Bruno Fernandes is, just like the team, played more games than any other side in the top 5 European divisions. I think that Bruno also has played more minutes on a pitch than any other player in those top 5 divisions too. So no wonder he looked knackered at the end of the season. And I think his role has slightly changed under Eric Ten Hag compared to what it was with Ole. I mean, ultimately, for Ten Hag, he had to rely on a smaller squad and fewer players who can score goals. The biggest loss, and I won't go into reasons why, obviously, was Mason Greenwood. But now, if he'd been playing for the squad now, we'd have expected him to have nailed down his place as a regular first teamer. And I mean, well, I would have hoped that would have been the case. And I think I wouldn't be greedy in thinking that I'd expect him, because he was described as a generational talent, and he's probably one of the best strikers of a football that I've seen for many years at United. Well, I would have hoped that, as well as being a first team regular at the club, he would also have been a regular scorer of double figure goals, probably 14, 15, 16 goals a season. That probably would have meant that we wouldn't have got Anthony, because obviously he's playing on the right. But also, you never know. It may be that Ten Hag wouldn't have seen him as a good fit for him. I can't see why that would have been, but you never know. I mean, ultimately, Greenwood's time at the club is probably over. What I'm not doing here anyway, over the whole compass of this video, is trying to say which manager is better. I'm not trying to do that. Why? Well, because Ole was great on the pitch, and I admire him and his balls for taking on what's got to be one of the hardest or most difficult jobs in world football. I mean, come on, imagine having Ed Woodward and the Glazers above you, messing around with club finances, keeping one arm tied behind your back all the time. And in that respect, Ole's first full season and a finish of 3rd was a tremendous achievement. And I have to applaud him for that. I've got to applaud him for that. However, Eric Ten Hag came into the club under an extremely dark cloud. The club was in a really bad place. I mean, Ralph Rangnick had just left the club. He'd been thrown under the bus by the Glazers. I mean, he was hired to review what was going on at the club and prepare a dossier for them to analyse the squad and see what needed to change. And he was never going to be the manager long term. But the consensus was that it was because he was given the title of interim manager, that gave him absolutely no authority with the squad. And at that time, there were certain players, I'm not going to name names, in the squad that saw that as a time it was a bit of a free-for-all, and cohesion in the side collapsed. And that led to leaks in the press, followed by rumours of bullying in the squad, and the treatment of coaches, and Ragnar himself with disrespect. And that literally translated onto the pitch. But apparently there were factions within the teams. The fact that Eric Ten Hag has enabled us to finish 3rd this season, based on all that, so he stabilised the club with some would say were unsurmountable odds at the time, and to get the club back in the Champions League for next season, is absolutely a fantastic achievement. But when it comes to comparing the two managers, that's Ole and obviously Ten Hag, and their first full seasons, the Dutchman does edge it for me. But not because the stats say he's a better manager, but because he's done so much in the face of adversity. I mean, injuries, have disrupted one away stars, a compacted league because of the World Cup. I mean, a game every 3 days for months. I mean, you name it. This season would have even challenged Fergie, I think, considering how many games were coming week after week after week. You know, we already had problems with strength in depth, injury problems. So, I mean, while Ollie's team scored more goals and conceded less, that season for him, I think, the club was more stable at the time. The team was more stable at the time. So, okay, yes, he had the Glazers, but so was Ten Hag. But Ollie did seem to lose his way after that first season, whereas Ten Hag seems to be a modern kind of no-nonsense manager who expects more than 100% from his players. Whereas, I say, Ollie seemed to lose his way a little bit, and you see that in press conferences, the amount of leaks that were already coming out before Ralph Rangnick's time. They were already coming out under Ollie. So the difference also is Ten Hag doesn't want to be the players' friend. He's their boss. He lays down the rules. He enforces them. And I think with the right backing, he could be the man to bring some success back to the club. He could be. Now, I'm not saying we will win the title next season, but I mean, if the transfer window goes anywhere close to how we may hope, then adding goals and some quality in depth to the team will push us on next season. And I think that's going to be crucial, because without that, we could ultimately see Ten Hag being thrown under that bus. Because ultimately the buck does stop with a manager. It doesn't matter if the Glazers stay and they don't give him money. Ultimately, they'll sack him. Ultimately, he'll be to blame for the lack of results, the lack of goals, the team performing poorly. If that happens, he will ultimately be to blame. And they'll be on that merry-go-round of new manager. We need the Glazers gone. That's it. We need some stability. Okay, we want a stable manager. Give him a few seasons to do well. But the manager needs support too. The manager's there to support the players. But the owners and a director of football, let's say, are there to support the manager. So if they're not doing their job, how can Ten Hag do his? And I think that's the crux of it. So over the coming weeks, we're going to see just how much support Ten Hag's going to get. I mean, there's been talk in the press over the last few months, and I've reported stories to you about what his budget might be and what players might be interested in. But we're going to find out the truth in the next month or two. So keep watching. Please let me know what you think about this video and anything I've said in it in the comments below. Please smash a like on the video too. And if you don't subscribe, please subscribe.
So I want to thank you for this season, for the contribution, for the backing us, for the support, and it was great, and so thank you. But when I say these words, there's still one game to go. So take the cup back to Old Trafford.